see Craig's list. He's moving some pieces around. That Schaefer kid he's got at number 1 now.
Oh, man. I would have him at 0.
He looked great, man. Too bad he got hurt. That was a big issue for Canada. He did get hurt, and he was driving
that guy
offense.
they could have said, you got the cage, you're young, but you are literally going to be the guy on this team. Him and that McKenna.
Yes.
Then he went down. But some team is going to get a guy for 15 years, first up on the penalty kill, first up on the power play, moves the puck up the ice, has great vision, makes plays. I don't see anybody. There's some other, the Mahagans, the American kid's a good player, but I don't see how anybody takes that guy down from the number 1
Well,
spot.
here, I'll give you a team that won't take him. The Buffalo Sabres.
They got 2 guys.
You've got Darlene, you've got Power, and now you've got Byram. You can't take Schaefer too. I mean,
no.
They might, but
yeah, you do take Schaefer, and you do other things with other people.
Well, that's what you
Give
could
your
do.
head a shake.
If you believe he's that much better, if you believe the Schaefer kid's the best player, maybe you do take him and you move off Owen Power. You're not moving off Darlene. He's your captain. You paid him. I think he's got a full no trade, full no move.
Not a lot of people bring up Darlene. He seems to get a hall pass because he's gritty and
Big
stuff.
time.
But it's dude, you signed for 11 sheets, man.
Yeah. He's one of the highest paid players in the league.
Yeah.
And they gave him the captaincy. They said, you're the guy. You're the one. We tanked, not for McDavid. We tanked for you, Rasmus Dahlin. You're our guy, and you have to drag us out of this. They actually beat Carolina in the afternoon yesterday.
Yeah.
Which was pretty crazy. But, as of right now, Chicago, the Blackhawks feel like it's a formality that they're going to be the last place team, but it doesn't mean you're going to win the lottery.
So what does that mean? If I'm the owner, I go right to the GM and say, remember when you fired the coach and you didn't think we were a last place team? What do you think now? What are you
Exactly. Doing? If Luke Richardson's probably guys, do you really think I was the problem?
And by the way, thanks for making me look bad and dealing with this mess. And it's actually your fault giving me that team.
Yes. You look at their roster, even the moves that they made, where Tyler Bertuzzi's been better recently in terms of point production.
Yeah.
But he's not a star player.
Dude, it
he's
doesn't matter how it should look. It could look. I looked at it on paper and I'm like, maybe they win a bunch of games this year. They're awful.
They're not. They are a terrible team. They are legitimately the worst team in the league, and they deserve to be dead last in the league. That's where they are. San Jose is not far. San Jose had a decent start. They're back to reality. They are bringing it down to the studs in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mike Greer's made some really smart plays, and he's gotten out from some contracts, and they've got young kids there. I think Greer's got that going in the right direction.
Both to get to,
but they're not close.
It's a long way to go.
And every organization and shows like ours will talk about it, and it's rightfully so the way athletes are these days. You better get it on track because Celebrini and Bedard, they don't want to be associated with a gong show for too long. They take it personally. They're like, I don't want to deal with this. So you better get it right sooner or later.
Well, and here's another thing.
You know how many times we said that in Edmonton where it's like, they better figure this out.
Absolutely. And there's no bridge deals anymore.
Yeah.
If this is who Celebrini is, in 2 years he's going to say, I want $11 million a year or so, whatever it is. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Young players, they get out of that entry-level deal. If they're legit, they get paid.
Well, they could also
immediately.
scare you and say, I'm not nothing long-term, sorry. Figure
that's
it out.
possible, but it's still going to be a high cap hit, right? That's another thing. And obviously Chicago and San Jose knew they weren't going to get the best of the entry-level deal because the teams just weren't that good.
Right.
You knew Bedard, it was going to be a struggle for a bit, Celebrini for sure. But it is a huge advantage to win games with guys making $900,000 or whatever, because you got 3 years of that, then they're going to make a lot more money.
But I'll tell you what, you can get a stud on your team if you're Connor Bedard and you get the number 1 overall pick and he's a stud.
Yes.
Suddenly you start to feel a little better about your lot in life.
Absolutely. Here's Craig Button, our TSN Director of Scouting, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Craig, we were just talking about your list, your midseason draft list. You got Schaefer now at 1. If you're Chicago and you end up with that first pick and you get Schaefer, how does that sound? Bedard and Schaefer moving forward.
It sounds good. I think Matt Schaefer's a defenseman like Drew Doughty. They control the game, and he's a true number 1. How many true number 1 defensemen are there in the league? 12, 13? No. There's not 32.
No.
And they drafted Lashunov last year in the first round, and good player, but he's not a number 1. He's not a guy that's going to control the game for you. And the Chicago Blackhawks, it's not like they're not like San Jose. San Jose, to me, Like if they have a chance to draft a player at 1, it's Schaefer because they don't have a guy like that. And if they're drafting 2, they should draft Porter Martone, in my view, because they don't have a player like that. They have centers. They don't need centers. And to me, Chicago needs a lot of everything. So take the guy that can control the game, and I think that Matt Schaefer is that guy.
What Hayes brought up an interesting scenario, Craig, and I know what I would do. What if Buffalo gets it? Are you still drafting him?
I just heard Dave talk about it's a good start if you can get these top players like Bedard and Celebrini. But isn't there a caveat to that? Isn't that what Buffalo's had for 14 years?
No kidding. No kidding.
Right? You know, so it's not just you're right, Dave. And like to be able to have the ability to draft these players and to set the course for your franchise with a franchise player, it's really important. But it's also what you do after that. So, Jeff, to your question about Buffalo, you know, Buffalo just seems to me to be in a place where they're like the Detroit Lions. Like they had top picks, they had good players, and they could never win. And, you know, to me, what's the identity of the Buffalo Sabres? Do they have one? I don't know what it is. I don't know if they don't even know what it is.
No.
So to me, you got to, like Dan Campbell went into Detroit, and he just said, here's what we're going to be. And there were some growing pains, but they knew what they wanted to be. They knew who they want. I don't think Buffalo knows who they want to be or what they want to be. So to your question, you know, like it's one of those, I guess it's an existential question. What do the Buffalo Sabres do? Because I'll tell you this, I don't think they know what to do.
That seems to be the case. You know, it really does seem to be the case that down in Buffalo, it's just constant turnover, constant finger pointing, constant, I don't know. I mean, it's just year after year after year. They haven't been in the playoffs in, 13 years, 14 years, and they're not even close. It sucks for the fan base. And yet, to your point, Craig, it's one thing if you accept, okay, we're not going to be that good, but here's the plan. Like I was saying that prior to you coming on. Like if I'm in San Jose, I'm looking at what Mike Greer's doing, saying, I get this. I think I know where we're going here. Like it might take some times, and there's going to be some misses, but you had to shed contracts. Then you're going to load up on young players. You're going to try to get top picks. All right, we got a plan here. Buffalo, I don't know. I mean, I really do. And even Chicago, I wonder what you think their plan is. Like clearly it was to bottom out and get Bedard. They did that. Now what? Because they fired Luke Richardson as if they considered this a legitimate team this year, and they're not. Yeah. They're awful.
Well, they are awful, and Kyle Davis at the beginning of the year talked about trying to fast forward the rebuild. Fast forward the rebuild? Are you kidding me? Like, you're hearing everything going on in Chicago right now. The players' spirits are broken. They're not high. They're losing. They're getting beat up bad. The fans are booing. They're going to stop showing up. They can't get their games on TV. I mean, it's a mess in Chicago. And to your point about San Jose, you think about, like, Mike Greer said, you know what, we're going to have to move off of Hurdle. So, you know, he took on a little bit of salary, and he makes a trade. He moves off of Carlson, you know, holds on a little bit of salary, but says we're moving on. And then when he sees a chance to get a number one goaltender in Ascara, boom, he acts. He's got a real good defenseman in Dickinson. They got real good players in Will Smith and Celebrini, obviously. But they got Quentin Mustin. They got Casper Holton and William Eklund, who are already there. So some really good players. And what you can see, to me, Mike Greer, it was a competitor big time. He knew he played on good teams. He understands that you've got to have different players in different spots. You can't just collect players. You can't just collect players and collect picks and everything. I'm going through this with Montreal now in different media. Oh, no, keep getting picks. All these picks and all these prospects are not going to play for the Montreal Canadiens. So you better recognize at some point in time, we better help our current group. We better help them taste a little bit of success. If they don't start tasting success, good luck having success.